Hello and welcome, Power Partners. It's our informational barnyard. It's Starstyle, Be the Star You Are, with me, your host, Cynthia Brian, brought to the airwaves under the auspices of Be the Star You Are charity and coming to you on Voice America Media, the Empowerment Channel. The miracle moment for today brought to you by Be the Star You Are. You can visit the charity at bethestaryouare.org, is from Mahatma Gandhi. The pure love of one soul can offset the hatred of millions. And we do have to show a lot more love these days in this turmoil of a world. But we're not going to talk about that today. In our first segment, we're actually going to go into the March garden because spring is the time to look forward. And coming up, March 20th marks the vernal equinox. California has been actually enjoying an early spring since the beginning of February. I mean, yellow is the predominant color. There's so much wild mustard, acacia trees, oxalis, Mexican stonecrop, daffodils dotting roadways, gardens, and hillsides. So I'm going to stroll through the March landscape and give you the lowdown. And then in our second segment, tax season's coming up, and we want to avoid any tax audits because receiving a notice indicating that the IRS is going to audit your tax return could be upsetting. I was looking at Schwab Investments, and they offer tips on how to report correctly so you can avoid any issues and decrease your chances of being audited. I think that is a really good idea. So that's what we'll be doing in segment two. Well, I say let's march forward. Alan Cohen said fascination is fertilizer, and wherever you place your attention, it's going to grow. And I totally agree. Well, the rain didn't come to the end of February, and then we had several warm days. It reached into the high 70s. It felt like bathing suit weather to me, and I tell you, I was tempted because fascination is fertilizer. I am really tickled with the signs of springs. It's really warm today, and the last couple of days we've gotten up until the 80s, but it's been beautiful. Bird song enchants me throughout the day. There's that magical music, energizing creativity. There's the buzz of the honeybees that fills the morning air. The croaking of the frogs reverberates throughout the evening. The pollinators are busy. They are savoring the sweetness of the flowering peach, my crab apples, and of course, the viburnum in full bloom. And, the vernal equinox is just around the corner. Yet, here in my part of California, we've been enjoying an early spring again since the beginning of February. Yellow is the predominant color of March, I think. And as I just said, it's the wild mustard, the acacia trees, the oxalis, the Mexican stonecrop, and the daffodils that are just ubiquitous. Now, if you wonder what the difference is between daffodils and jonquils, I will tell you that daffodil is the common name for the genus Narcissus, while a jonquil is a specific species and it has several strong scented yellow florets, and their leaves are rounded, and they all look like daffodils, but they're scented, and that is what's so beautiful about the jonquil. Now, the daffodils and jonquils that I have varied throat colorations. Some are frilly, ruffly. Their petal markings decorate my landscape and my floral arrangements. Now, depending on what garden expert you might speak to, there are anywhere between 40 and 200 different species, subspecies, or varieties of daffodils with thousands of hybrids. I know it sounds weird that you can say that it depends on who you talk to, and it can vary as much as 40 to 200, but that is the truth about the way that people think about daffodils. Daffodil bulbs and blooms are poisonous to deer, squirrels, and rodents. And what makes them so great for the garden is they're tolerant of all types of weather, and they grow beautifully in sun or shade, and they actually naturalize when they're planted in drifts. And they really are the true trumpets of spring, of this vernal equinox. Spring is the time to look forward. Now, the 2026 Garden Trends Report from the Garden Media Group names lemonading as the gardening theme of the year. Lemonade. That's another March yellow, right? Lemons, lemonade. The philosophy is rooted in turning challenges into opportunities with creativity, joy, and intention. So, lemonading is about curiosity and play, transforming setbacks into opportunities through mindfulness. Now, since I was a young girl, I have always embraced what I call lemonading. The idea that when life gives you lemons, you just make lemonade, because gardening is filled with examples. It doesn't matter if one is an accomplished green thumb or a beginner, mistakes and disappointments always occur in the garden. Plants will get diseases, deer will devour the roses, beloved plants will die. It's part of the cycle. So instead of giving up, my mantra has always been failure is fertilizer. Put the blunders and plunders on the compost pile, build a new garden. Now, people I meet often tell me that they cannot grow anything. I have been told, oh, I have a brown thumb. Everything I try withers and dies. But I got to tell you, I really don't buy that response, because that narrative is just a belief that these people have told themselves. Try planting a plot of shamrocks, also known as oxalis, and you'll be celebrating St. Patrick's Day every year. Dig a few bulbs in your garden bed and be surprised when blooms magically appear. Shift to succulents or cacti with almost no maintenance required. Wherever one places attention, growing and thriving will occur. Now, the early show of spring transpired in February, but March is showcasing the spectacular. While many trees remain bare, camellias, tulip magnolias, crabapple, redbuds, peach, Bradford pear, and plum blossom sweeten the sky. Dutch iris, calla lilies, Virginia, sedums, rosemary, Chinese fringe flower, and numerous spring flowering bulbs engage our sentence and our senses. Optimism and reflection soar with the flamboyant and the mystical quality of the sweeping spring landscape as we welcome this month of rebirth. The quiet crunch of gravel underfoot as I gather a bouquet of fluffy plumes reminds me to experience the calmness as well as the beating pulse of the floral abundance of my spring garden, and how grateful I am for a stroll in the serenity of nature with its twinkling patterns of wistful beauty. Lemonade life and march forward. And as the goddess gardener, every month I offer a gardening guide, and this is the guide for March. Buy azaleas, camellias, and rhododendrons now so you can choose colors that will complement your landscape. Fertilize all plants throughout the month. Apply snail bait around plants susceptible to snail and slug damage. Spray roses, fruit trees that have not budded, and citrus with a combination of mineral oil and liquid copper to kill overwintering insect eggs and disease spores. And wash any citrus fruit with warm water before consuming it after it's sprayed. It's the spray won't hurt your citrus fruit and it won't hurt you, but wash everything. Treat viburnums and other plants that may exhibit powdery mildew. An effective organic spray is to mix 1 tablespoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of non-detergent soap into a gallon of water. The soap helps the mixture stick to the leaves, and neem oil is also a useful organic fungicide. It's time to monitor irrigation. Now, rain is predicted throughout March, but water your landscape only when necessary and watch to see if it is getting dry. Prepare flower beds by enriching the soil with compost, earthworms, and mulch. Don't forget to weed, 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 because weeds are stealing the nutrients and moisture from your favorite flowers. Gather the tender leaves of wild mustard and miner's lettuce and add it to your salad bowl. I am still gathering arugula, which is still growing in my garden, and I'm adding that to my salad bowl, which I love. Sharpen and clean garden tools because you'll be busy next month. And collect fallen camellia florets. Rotting flowers left on the ground encourage petal blight. Cut a few branches from flowering peach or plum trees to enjoy the slow release of the sweet-smelling, beautiful blooms. Get a tetanus shot if you haven't had one in the past 10 years. Digging in the dirt doubles the hazards. Now, it's time to aerate your lawn. The soil is compacted from winter rains and foot traffic. Leave the plugs to add nutrients back into the grass. And it's also time to fertilize lawns anytime throughout the month with an organic high nitrogen mixture specifically for spring growth, and you'll get your grass growing really nice and deep green. Soak any bare root shrubs, roses, and trees in tepid water for 4 hours to rehydrate them before planting. Buy seed packets from catalogs or your favorite garden center. And be brave and explore new samples. And then don't forget on March 17th to celebrate St. Patrick's Day with a container of shamrocks, also known as oxalis. And, make sure to say the Irish phrase, Erin go bra, which means Ireland forever. So happy gardening, happy growing, wishing you the luck of the Irish throughout the month of March. And don't forget, for more seasonal gardening tips and inspiration, you can grab a copy of Growing with the Goddess Gardener at my website, cynthiabrian.com/books. If you click on the Starstyle store, you can order that book along with Chicken Soup for the Gardener's Soul or any of my other 10 books that I've written 12 so far, but they're there. I only list 10 of them, including the Stella Bella's Barnyard Adventures newest book, Flap Forward, Fly Free. So again, that's at cynthiabrian.com. Click on the Starstyle store or just go to books. Well, I'll be back in our next segment and we're going to talk about tax editing. So until then, grab a cup of tea or do something that is fun for yourself for a couple of minutes, and I'll be right back. You're listening to Cynthia Brian. This is Starstyle, Be the Star You Are. I'll be back in a bit. You've done the work. Your idea is strategic, it's well reasoned, and it's ready to move to the organization right now. You present it at the meeting clearly, and everyone in the room listens. But listening isn't deciding, and too often, its interest doesn't turn into action. And here's why. Executive teams aren't just evaluating your idea, they're navigating their own web of priorities, politics, and timing. And for your message to gain traction, it has to reflect their reality, not just yours. Remember, you're the star of your own performance. Turn your passions into profits. I'm Cynthia Brian with another business bite from Starstyle. For more information, visit cynthiabrian.com. That's Brian with an I.com. Well, we are back on Starstyle, Be the Star You Are, and I am your host, Cynthia Brian. In this segment, we're going to be talking about how to avoid a tax audit. And so many of these tips come from Schwab Investments. Their information, it's a company that I do like. And I think that what they have to say is really helpful, and nobody wants an audit. Because when you get a federal tax return that says you have been selected for examination, usually you get a letter in the mail. I mean, that is a piece of correspondence that evokes as much anxiety as just about anything. After all, not only can the IRS audit be extremely time consuming, it can also be extremely expensive. It can also result in additional taxes, interest, and even penalties. And certain taxpayers Business owners, the self-employed, and the wealthy historically have been flagged for examination. And that's because the tax returns of the affluent are generally more complex, and therefore they're more likely to contain some red flags for their IRS. So, taxpayers with more than $5 million in income are by far the most likely households to be audited. Now, most of us probably do not have $5 million in income. I know that I don't, but we're still going to talk about what are some of the IRS top audit triggers, because we want to get you ready for tax time. If you haven't already filed your taxes, you might want to be, you might have to file an extension. But here's our things that will help you when you are doing your tax planning. So, one of the things that is definitely looked at is any missing income. If you have derived income from regular wages automatically and you have taxes withheld, employers report those taxes to the IRS. However, taxes aren't normally withheld from non-wage income, and that could include any business income, capital gains, dividends, interest, rental income, royalties. And that makes it more prone to discrepancies. And then you get an examination by the IRS. So, what do? Your financial firm will usually send out 1099 forms for capital gains, dividends, interests, and that must be accounted accurately on your return. So if you have an investment company, whether it's at a bank or someplace like Fidelity or Schwab or Merrill Lynch or anything, um, the income that doesn't pass through an intermediary, such as business or rental, you are required to document and report it yourself. If you underreport income, it's often due to a missing or out of date 1099 and inaccurate accounting practices, maybe sometimes both. But whatever your sources of income, you need to ensure that your return reflects them all. Don't miss a dollar. Don't miss a dollar. If you have income from dividends, interest, payment for goods and services, distributions from annuities or pensions or retirement, your regular wages, Social Security, rental incomes if you're an independent contractor, if you sold any securities like stocks, if you have digital assets, if you have proceeds from a real estate sale or income from a partnership, interest, and all of that has to be reported. So if you have that many things, you may not be able to do it on just a very easy report. You might have to have an accountant help you with it. And individuals whose income fluctuates significantly from one tax year to the next can also find themselves in the IRS sites. This is the second one. This is called large swings in income, and that can be the case for those who are self-employed or who own a business. And big changes in income are a huge red flag for the IRS because they sometimes signal underreported income, either in the current year or in previous years. So what you need to do is consider including a note or an explanation with your tax filing if there are really large fluctuations in your expenses or incomes. If your business income plunged because you lost a large account or you had these big tariffs, you want the IRS to take that into consideration when determining whether an audit is warranted. And if you're filing electronically, most tax software allows you to add supplemental documentation and schedules to help you explain your situation. So definitely take advantage of that. Also, business losses. I mean, turning a profit can be challenging for anyone, especially if you're just getting off the ground. But if you year after year after year after year, claim a loss, then they may decide that you just have a hobby because businesses are supposed to make money. And if yours doesn't, the IRS wants to know why. So keep really careful records for at least 7 years that detail every dollar coming into and going out of your business. And if your business is a sole proprietorship, the IRS may question, whether it's more of a hobby, as I said, in which case the losses are not deductible if it's a hobby. And then be careful of questionable deductions. Most of deductions are probably correct and well-founded, but sometimes they might trigger a second look by the IRS, especially if there are too big of outsized charitable deductions, because charitable deductions are capped at 60% of your adjusted gross income for cash and 30% for stocks and other properties. If you have passive losses on rental property, if the cost to operate a property exceed the rental income it generates, you may not be able to claim a loss. And so you got to check with that. And then any unqualified office deductions, unless you're self-employed and conduct the majority of your business from your home, you really can't deduct office expenses. But people who do work from home might assume that they can take the deduction. But unfortunately, regular employees, if you are employed by someone, that doesn't qualify, even if they pay out of pocket for all or part of your home office setup. So, what you have to do is you need supporting documentation for any deduction on your tax return, especially those that are significant or subject to special rules like rental losses. And you can always avoid, well, no, you can't always avoid. You can't always avoid an audit, but with thorough records that support your deductions, you might be able to appease auditors. And then the other thing that could trigger an audit is undervalued assets. Like estate tax returns tend to be audited at a fairly high rate, and the biggest reason, undervalued assets. The IRS has very professional, seasoned valuation experts, and if they think the estate has valued its assets too low, they may decide that they want to audit you. So when valuing assets with no public market price, like real estate or art or, even a business, executors of large estates should average the estimates from 2 or 3 qualified appraisers. Now, just always remember, you as the taxpayer, as the business person, the buck always stops with you. So even if you hire a tax professional to prepare your return, you are responsible for the accuracy of your filing. It falls on your shoulders. And I know I just filed my Starstyle Productions return, and I do everything with an accountant. And when I got the return back, I didn't understand a thing the way that he had done it. So we had to have a meeting and he went over every single item so that to make sure that this was what was correct. So going through these steps, they might help reduce the likelihood of an audit, but just remember nothing is guaranteed. So if you follow the rules and you retain good documentation and you have a good trusted tax advisor to represent you, the process could go actually quite smoothly. And for that, I do think having an accountant or someone who helps you with your taxes is really very, very helpful. The IRS also has 3 main types of audits. Some are more painful than others. There's a correspondence audit. That's probably the most common one. It typically is just conducted by mail, sent for reasons like there's some missing information, or maybe you have a small balance due, or you need to identify who you are. And just be aware there's scammers out there. So be really, really careful with anything that you get in the mail, because it has been known that scammers send fraudulent letters to collect funds from unsuspecting taxpayers. You want to identify fakes, and it's not always so easy. But red flags would include a demand for immediate payment, threats of jail time, grammatical errors, misspelling. And, if you're ever unsure of a letter's authenticity, I would just contact the IRS. Here's their phone number, 800 829 1040, 800 829 1040, or visit its website and then confirm a letter's legitimacy. And you can also report an incident. Now, the second one is an office audit, and in that type of audit, taxpayers receive a written summons. They have to go to an IRS office. They have to meet with an agent. And this one is usually for more complex tax returns, or if the return has multiple items that are questions. The most comprehensive one is called a field audit. And this is in-person meeting, typically at the taxpayer's business or home, to conduct a thorough examination of the return in questions. And those audits can last several weeks or months, depending on the issues being reviewed and the complexity of the tax return. But for every type of audit, the IRS will provide in advance a written request for the specific documents it wants to see. And for that reason, it's just so important to really keep good documentation. And for those of you who are self-employed or working from home as a self-employed person, where you could take a deduction for your office, just remember that it has to be a designated space where you do your office, where you do your work. It can't be just a nook somewhere where you're also watching TV and doing homework and all. It has to be specifically designated as an office. So hopefully these tips will help you avoid tax audits, get your taxes in on time, and hopefully get some money back from Uncle Sam instead of having to pay. Well, that is our show for today. I thank you for joining me here on Starstyle, Be the Star You Are. I like being a personal growth success coach for you and hopefully can help you make your life better and help your dreams come true while you live with lots of smiles and happiness. If you want to make a donation to Be the Star You Are, you can visit bethestaryouare.org. You can even make donations with credit card or with if you're, I don't know what age is it. Is it 72? When you have to make a mandatory IRA, you have to take the mandatory distributions. You can do that through your IRAs to Be the Star You Are. And that is bethestaryouare.org. If you're interested in any of my books or to find out more about Starstyle Productions, you can visit cynthiabrian.com. My aim, as always, is to encourage, inspire, inform, amuse, and motivate. See beyond your physical being and know you are already the star you dreamed of becoming. Cherish the past, dream of the future, and celebrate every moment of your life. And read a book this week. A book is like a garden in your pocket. So until next week, when we play here on the Starstyle Playground and in my barnyard, remember that love always wins, kindness always prevails, and smiles will keep us happy. I am Cynthia Brian for Starstyle. I thank you and encourage you to be kind, be inclusive, tell the truth, live with integrity, embrace cultures, love unconditionally, encourage others, be generous, read, lead, succeed, communicate, collaborate, innovate, and most of all, every minute of every day, be your unapologetically authentic self because everyone counts. Go out into the world and be the star you are. Enjoy this early spring weather and have a wonderful week.